The following program is a Town of Colonie television production of the William K. Sanford Town Library.
At any rate, welcome, good afternoon. Thank you all for coming. It's wonderful to see so many of you here, new faces, and I won't say old faces, but people I know. Well, okay, old faces. How many of you have never been to a Death with Dignity-Albany program before? Oh, wow, that's great. Wonderful. Well, I hope that you will find the program interesting and sign up to be on our email list, which is how we send out notifications for programs and updates on legislation and so forth. So we'd love to add you to our list. Just let me tell you a little bit about Death with Dignity Albany. As of this month, we are 3 years old. And we are 660 people strong, which is a pretty good indication of the interest in this community and talking about end-of-life issues and supporting end-of-life choices for legislation. So that's exciting. Death with Dignity Albany's mission is to build a community where people can learn about and talk about a very broad spectrum of end-of-life issues. And we also advocate for the passage of legislation in New York to allow medical aid in dying. And after our main speakers presenting the topic of today, we're going to hear from our advocacy coordinator, Amanda Kavanaugh, because we have some pretty exciting news in terms of the progress of legislation for medical aid in dying. So hopefully you can stay long enough that you can hear from Amanda, but we will still end at 2 as promised. And today, we're going to hear about how to get your affairs in order. What about the ducks? You know the line? Get your ducks in a row, right. I think I already just stole Lynda's thunder. I didn't mean to do that. So first, we're going to hear from Lynda Shrager. Then we'll take questions for her. Then we're going to hear from Dorothy Rossett. We'll take questions from her, and then we'll hear from Amanda Kavanaugh. So that's how this is going to be running. Lynda Shrager is a registered occupational therapist with a master's degree in social work. She is a certified aging in place specialist and a professional organizer. Lynda is a featured columnist for Everyday Health, an online consumer health website. She is an international speaker, presenting lectures and workshops in the area of caregiving, aging in place, organizing health and home, breast cancer treatment and survivor issues, and senior health and wellness. Pretty broad range. Lynda is a published author whose newest book on aging in place will be published this spring. So please welcome Lynda Shrager.
This is a great crowd. This is great. I'm glad you're all here. One day pre-blizzard, so our timing was good. We spend the first half of our lives acquiring things and the second half getting rid of them. So let's just see a show of hands. Who's in the first half? Who's acquiring? And be honest. Come on. All right, come on, you're all chicken. And who's in the second half getting rid of stuff? Well, whoa. Okay. And are some of us kind of doing a little bit of both? Yeah, okay. So I have an obituary to read to you. And this is the Times Union. This is real. I couldn't have done it better if I had written it myself. David Schlang, born on May 2nd, 1945 in Albany, son of the late Charles Schlang and late Shirley Cohn. This is older now, I carry it around with me. Died on November 1st, 2016 at the age of 71. He left behind a legacy, including a lot of stuff. That his wife and daughters have no idea what to do with. So, if you're in the market for golf clubs, golf balls, general sporting equipment, random electronics, CDs, cassettes, and LPs, please wait an appropriate amount of time and then get in touch. Really, please. But this is not an ad for a yard sale. This is an obituary for a great man, committed husband, and adoring father. And then it goes on for 2 more columns. But this is the best, isn't it? Okay, so I have a secret to share with you. It was passed on to me by an esteemed organizing colleague. It is a secret so blasphemous that it is hardly uttered above a whisper. It is a secret, the fact of which will be denied by many boomer and senior humans. The secret is so powerful, it can move mountains of stuff. Many will go to their graves never having heard it. Are you ready? Yep. You listening? Yep. Your kids don't want your stuff. Okay? If you are saving your life's treasures for your kids, forget it. Studies have shown that the assumption that treasures of decades past will likewise be treasured by future generations is, for the most part, a wrong assumption. And often these treasures are viewed as a burden drenched with all types of emotions. To begin to downsize, we need to look at the emotional ties that we have to our treasures. I remember my mother threatening my siblings and I that we better go to her basement and pick up the boxes that we had left there. And these were very, very important. They had our high school yearbooks, they had other very precious memorabilia, they had the love letters from the boyfriend, and she literally gave us a date and said, I am throwing them out on this date if you don't get here. She figured that if it was so important to us, then it should live with us. And so that's a good way to think about it. If you have other people's stuff, which I call OPS, O-P-S, that's a good way to start, okay? Because it's not even yours. It's the kids and whoever else, and it's in boxes somewhere in your home. So you tell them that I'm going to start cleaning and purging, and I want you to come over and get your stuff out of my house. Actually, I love these guys, but they're in my way. I'm going to move them. Okay. So to begin downsizing and decluttering, we should contemplate the following. You want to examine the nature of the attachment to an object when it is particularly hard to part with it. So was it given to you by a special person? Does it depict a very special occasion? Often it's the meaning behind the item and not the item itself that makes it hard to part with. So you can collect stories about the stuff, and that'll help you decide if you really love it or not. There were some handouts in the back. If you didn't grab it, you can grab it after. But the first one on top, it says getting rid of stuff. And it talks about defining your goal. Do you want to be more clutter-free? Do you want to be able to move safely throughout your home? You know, there was a joke that the hoarders all came today, but what I do is I'm an occupational therapist and I do home care. So I'm out in the community, in people's homes, rummaging through them all day long. And I've really met some real hoarders, like the Oprah hoarders. And, you know, that's a situation that's beyond, I'm sure, what most of us are here for. But I do see the situation where it's just there's so much stuff that it's not safe. I mean, you can have your reasons for your stuff, but when it gets to a point where you can't get from here to the bathroom, then it becomes a problem. So maybe you're hoping to travel more, maybe you are planning on moving to a smaller place. So decide if your stuff contributes to the progress toward your goal. So ask yourself, what is the likelihood I will use it again? Can I make money from this? Would someone else benefit from having it? Is it so special I want a special person to have it? Will my life change in any way if I get rid of this? What is the absolute worst thing that would happen if I get rid of this? And sort of paint a picture of yourself in the future, and then see if this item is helping you to be there or not. And also, if you needed it in the future, could you get it again? Okay. Now, you all have, it looks like you have a piece of paper in front of you. I want you to, oops, I don't want you to do that. I want you to do this. I want you to take a minute, get out a pen, and if you had 20 minutes before your house was going to burn down, I want you to write down what you would grab. So take a minute. Borrow a pen, or if you have. I'll give you another couple seconds since we're a little pressed for time today. So, how many people found that to be very easy? Okay. How many thought it was hard to do that? A few. Okay. Anyone want to just throw out there what a couple things were on your list?
Cell phone.
Cell phone.
Cats.
The cats?
My spouse.
You're a keeper. That's very good. Yes. The family photographs, did you say? Okay. So, we all sort of have an idea. But what we often haven't thought about is where stuff is in the house. So, for example, for me, I have the photographs, and they are in a good, safe box in the basement. But then I've got the jewelry that was my mother's and my grandmother's, but that's up hidden in the bedroom. So, and then I have a couple other things that are over there and over there. So, think about if you have your special stuff, and this is a good exercise for you to go home later and seriously think about it and look around the house and say, what if this happened? But then I want you to also think about making a little map to where things are. Because in a crisis, if God forbid there really was a fire or something and you're running and you're crazy, you're not going to be able to go down in the basement and up in the bedroom at the same time. So you might want to consider keeping stuff together, the stuff that you're going to grab, or putting it in a safer place. But it's a good little thing to think about. So when I help people to start decluttering, I start with what I call the initial Blitz Purge. And you want to then just throw away as much junk as possible. And you should have supplies ready. I mean, if you're going to do this, you have to be serious. You have to get the boxes and the tape and the markers and the garbage bags and the shredder. You're going to make this a serious task. But you should, first, the initial blitz is just going through each room and really getting rid of garbage. I mean, I could walk into my den now and find 3, old pens on the floor and the dog's thing under the couch and papers that just got there and real junk. And if you go through each room and just try to get rid of that in the first place, that's a good way to start. And even the junk drawer. And you know what? A lot of organizers are really big on that you shouldn't have a junk drawer. And I totally disagree. I think it's very important. I think you have to have a good junk drawer. But you can go through your junk drawer and clean that out. Get rid of old junk to make room for good, fresh, new junk. Okay, so even the junk drawer should be looked at. But you want to break up a daunting task into a smaller pieces, things that are manageable. So don't think, oh my God, my house is a wreck, I've got to do my whole house. Because then what will you do? Nothing. Because it's so overwhelming, you won't go there. So instead, plan to limit yourself to one room at a time, even one area. So let's say there's the big closet off the den. So now you're going to say, I'm going to take just 2 hours, and I'm going to go in that closet, and I'm not coming out until I've really gotten rid of the stuff and organized it and packed it on the shelves and done whatever. But if you focus on one little area, you'll be surprised that you'll be very successful. And the good thing is that will give you a visual kind of a prompt to say, oh, I can do this, because every time you walk in the den, you'll look at that shelf or that little area and say, this looks pretty good, and then you'll want to move on. So you want to break it down into a small piece to give you the positive reinforcement to keep going. So you're going to go room to room, and then the question is, what do I keep and what do I get rid of? So you want to look at what use does this item have in your life? If you haven't used it in over a year, it might be time to consider getting rid of it. Is it beautiful and do you love it, or are you keeping it just out of habit? If it's a clothing piece, one tip is if you haven't worn it in a year, it might be time. Or at least, around here we have seasons, if let's say you go through 2 years, I'll even give you 2. But if it's been 2 years, then it might be time to say, you know what, the jeans just aren't going to fit me. Or you might say, I'm going to treat myself, and when I lose the 20 pounds, I'll get new jeans. So, think about that. Okay, so your next handout, I'm not sure what it says on top, but it's categorizing it into groups. So these are the groups that you're going to make piles out of. You're going to go through and you're going to make your piles. Keep, give away, garage sale potential, charitable donations, and throw it away now. Now, what isn't on that list? Keep is there. Well, give away. But there's one thing that is not on that list at all.
Sell.
Well, that's garage sale. How about hold? We all love hold. Oh, I don't know. I'll just put it in the hold pile, and I'll think about it later. And believe me, that's what people end up doing. They don't do any of these. Okay, they hold it. So the rule is, it's called the Ohio rule. Only handle it once. You get to pick it up. You get to put it in one of those 5, not hold, okay? And then you will accomplish something. Now, I do make an exception when if you get a hold of important papers, because if you're going to sit there and start reading through them, you're going to get, you're going to get off the track. So you get to hold the papers and put those in an envelope somewhere. But other than that, these should be your piles. Now, a lot of us have lots of items in the same category. I don't know about you, but I have the measuring spoon collection in, heart-shaped, and the metal one and the plastic one. I have my mother and my grandmother and my pots and pans. You would think I cook a lot, but that isn't true at all. So when really it comes down to it, I have my favorite soup pot and my favorite pan. I think I use 3 things all the time, and the rest of them are a little on the greasy side, a little tucked away in the cabinets. I never even use them. Some other examples of that are the tool collection, where you have, God knows how many of each thing. The towel collection, which are old and raggy, some of them. The linen collection. Now, I, of course, have the college linens, which is lovely, but my daughter's now 31 and 27. They live in their apartments in Manhattan, and they don't have extra long single beds anymore. So why do I have those? So these are the things that you might want to consider, that if you've got a lot of them, it might be time. Generally, you want to stay ahead of clutter. So sort and file your mail every day. If you go out to the mailbox and you walk back in my example, you go through the garage to get to the house. In the garage, stand there. Look at all the junk you just got. Put it in the recycling. Don't even bring it in the house. It gets in there, and then it never goes out. So just don't let it in. That's a very good tip. Keep your newspapers till the next one arrives, and then just get it out there. If you love an article in a magazine or in a newspaper, clip the article or the magazine, but you don't need to clip the article out of it. You don't need to save the whole thing. Okay, so then, but you could make just a little file with your favorite articles on whatever and cut them out and keep them neat. You're allowed to keep them in a file, but you don't have to have 30 newspapers or magazines. Donate clothing to your favorite charity. Oops, wait, I want it. Donate clothing. Now, some of the theater groups really love what they call period clothing, which is just what we wear. But how did that happen, where my clothes are now period clothes? But they really do. The theater groups love to have stuff, and they really do use them for costumes. So that's kind of an interesting place. You can have a garage sale. That's a lot of work. Warning, you think, oh, I'm going to put a little, piece of paper on each thing that says 50 cents and call it a day. You have to really work hard to get that all organized. There's actually people who do that. Back there's all this information, and a colleague of mine, her name is Sheila. She has a business called Sheila, and that she actually will do your whole garage sale for you. But it's the kind of thing where it's worth it to give somebody some of the money just to get it done. Professional junk removers. So my all-time favorite is college hunks hauling junk. Because you just have to look at them and who cares, But that's a thing. They really are. And, of course, 1-800-GOT-JUNK. You've all heard of them. So they're around. And you want to use the in-out rule. So for everything that comes in, anything you bring in, a set of towels or a new book or a video or whatever, you should get rid of one. Out. If you do keep it, though, you want to organize your stuff in clear plastic boxes. They should be the clear plastic ones. If they're in cardboard or not see-through, then it goes, forget it. You don't know what it is. I mean, Target, we don't have good, like the Container Store here in Albany. We're a little behind the times. But even Target or Walmart or wherever has the big plastic. But plastic is good because you can see it. You want to put all parts of the whole together. So the Barbie house that is in my basement, I admit these things, with the Barbie clothes and the Barbie things and the Barbie shoes and all that stuff. So it's together. The American Girl dolls, maybe someday I will have somebody to give these to. You want to store stuff that you're going to use in a convenient, accessible place. And you want to kind of just contain everything where it's pretty accessible. So quickly, I'll tell you, there's something called Next Avenue. I don't know if you read their articles. It's an online national journalism service for the older population. The articles are fantastic. It's called Next Avenue. And fairly recently, they did an article called Sorry, Nobody Wants Your Parents' Stuff. And it was so popular, then they reprinted it in the New York Times, and it was all over the place, and it got the most readership of any article they have ever had, ever in their history. 1.5 million views at the last I looked. But it was just interesting because it really did stay with the theme that, unfortunately, this is true. A lot of the kids these days, they don't want anything brown. No more brown. So, all of that gorgeous oak furniture that you have that you're assuming that they'll take, and the dining room set and all that, if it's brown, you might be in trouble. So what I did give you was, one of the handouts was a place for donations. And I updated it the other day when I was preparing for this, but of course, these things change. So if you were to gather your stuff, just call, make sure the hours, and, they're still taking whatever. But there really are a lot of good places locally to donate things, and sometimes that's our problem. We just don't know where to put it. So if we think about it, if we have it listed, it helps. Grassroot Givers, which is on here, I've recently come to know them. I brought my own stuff over there, and they're just an amazing place, and they take a lot of stuff, and they take books. And you can't ever figure out where to put books these days. So they're a good one. But there's a whole list on there, so feel free. Okay, so I gave you that whole story that your kids don't want your stuff, but now I have a little caveat. Maybe the kids want a little of your stuff. So there are some treasures that may stir up emotions and cause family conflict. The wedding albums, the jewelry, the antique furniture, a treasure collection, and that maybe becomes problematic. So my mother was unfortunately diagnosed with a very fast-moving cancer. And she literally, from the day she was diagnosed till the day she died, it was 6 weeks. But she was pretty cool lady, and she said, I want you kids to come over. And we came over with Post-it notes, and we literally went around the house and put down who wanted what. This was because my father, who was going to be left, would not have been good at this, and she knew that. And we did that. I mean, it took a lot of wine, and, it wasn't easy. Don't get me wrong, it wasn't. It was the hardest day ever. But it really made her feel that she, like, just the stress was off her, that she really did know who would, not that we hadn't talked about some of it, but we didn't talk about everything. So this is my Aunt Shirley. Now, if you can see by this picture, do I have a, oh, I didn't mean that. I have a pointer, but this is, right here, is a glass cake plate. Sitting on it is a picture of Aunt Shirley holding the glass plate, if you can tell what that is. So one day, I open my mail. Aunt Shirley lives in Arizona, and there is this plate with a note from Aunt Shirley saying that she is going to be downsizing and moving out of her house to a condo in Arizona, and she decided she wanted everybody to have something. And she didn't want to wait till she was dead, and she just wanted a little something to go to all the nieces and the nephews, and it was the coolest idea. So now I have the plate, which I used for lots of holidays. But better yet, I have the picture of Aunt Shirley holding the plate and the note. And that is such a great thing. And it really is a very, very meaningful thing. And then every holiday, we all talk about Aunt Shirley. And so that was just a really cool idea to pass on. You don't have to wait till you're dead. If you've got, the teacup, tea and saucer collection, or the this or the that, and you have family or grandchildren or whoever, think about maybe starting to give some of that away now while you're happy and healthy, and they are too, and you can enjoy seeing them enjoy it. There is something called Who Gets Grandma's Yellow Pie Plate. It's an online site, and it talks about how to help with inheritance and transfers of non-titled personal property. It was developed by the University of Minnesota Extension, and they have interesting, ways on there to how to broach the subject. So you can try Aunt Shirley's idea. You can also take pictures of items and then do one of those online photo books. Those are easy, like Shutterfly. So, if you've got the tool collection or if you've got the china collection, take pictures of them and then give everybody the book. So they don't have to have all the stuff. They can just have the picture of it. If you have a big collection of something, maybe pick out 2 or 3 things that really are meaningful and then give the rest away. And then, so my sister, brother, and I, although we sound like the perfect family, we are totally not that perfect. And there were a couple of things, and I was just, as I was preparing this talk the other day, reminding my sister about this, there were a couple things in my mother's house that we all wanted. It wasn't as easy as just the Post-it notes. So what were we going to do? So what we decided was we always, no matter what, get together at Thanksgiving. So my brother took the one thing, I took the other, and my sister took the third. And then at Thanksgiving, we bring them back and we switch so that everybody gets, round robin for those 3 things. So that's how we agreed on the things that we couldn't agree on. Okay, so if you're called upon, though, to clean out someone's home, and it doesn't necessarily mean because they passed away, it may mean because they had to move to another type of housing. You want to prepare to divide the labor. You want to try to get help with this. It can be really very overwhelming. And you don't want to get too exhausted because you could miss things. We got a call from this uncle of my husband's who lived in New York, had no family. My husband always did his taxes every year. But other than that, we never laid eyes on the guy. And all of a sudden, we got a call from the hospital. He had been taken there. The only name he had was us. The only family he had was us. And we had to go and then get him and bring him back to Albany because he couldn't be alone anymore. But going through that apartment was unbelievable. It was a real hoarding situation. But I have to tell you, we found stuff. I mean, real serious bonds and things literally in the garbage of the drawers. So you never know. You have to take your time and look. You want to find the key financial papers, the wills, the trusts, life insurance policies and statements, real estate, deeds and titles, that kind of thing. You can hire an estate appraiser. They'll value the furniture, the jewelry, and the antiques. You might want to do an online search first to get an idea of what the market is, because these guys, they also, if they're going to get some kind of money out of it, they could up it a little bit. So, because they kind of charge an hourly fee or a percentage. There is something called the American Society of Appraisers. I don't think that's on your list, but the American Society of Appraisers, and they have a website, and they'll tell you who's been vetted and that kind of thing. And, there are liquidators. There are people who will come in, again, to hire them. They get a percentage, but they do the whole thing. So your last handout, I think, it's tie up loose ends. And that's, again, if you are going to close down an estate or help someone move. These are some of the things you don't think of necessarily: notifying the post office, forwarding the mail, canceling the credit cards, the newspapers, the subscriptions, insurances when necessary, utilities, and all of that stuff. If the apartment was empty, if it was rented, you want to empty it and clean it up and get it back into order. Transfer the vehicle titles and that type of thing. So there's a list there for you. So I'm just going to sum up with something that I think many of you may have talked about it, but although I think when you just raised your hands, many of you were new to this group, so perhaps you haven't. But it's called the Conversation Project. And the Conversation Project began in 2010 with Ellen Goodman. If some of you remember, Ellen Goodman was a columnist, is a Pulitzer Prize author. And she and a group of colleagues and concerned media, clergy, and medical professionals gathered to share stories of what they called good deaths and bad deaths. And out of that became a grassroots public campaign with a goal to make it easier to initiate conversations about dying and to encourage people to make their wishes known. So they called it the Conversation Project, and they collaborated with the Institute for Healthcare Improvement to form a not-for-profit organization to encourage people to talk about their wishes and provide them with tools to make the conversation easier. So they believe that the place for this conversation to happen is around the dinner table, not in the intensive care unit. And by you guys coming here today and just listening to all this and thinking about the decluttering process, you've made the first step to realizing that it is a conversation that we all need to have with our families. We could all go out right now and get hit by a car, and that would be it. So if we have our ducks in a row, if we've prepared for this a little bit, it really is a gift that you're leaving the people who are going to come after you. And it really will be a very helpful thing to you and your family. Now, I do get 2 seconds to plug my book, which is coming out in a few weeks. And this book is about aging in place, and it's really about helping. It's sort of geared toward the baby boomer population, those of us who have parents who are older, but also the parents themselves who are trying to stay in their home and age in place. There's a bookmark back there that you're welcome to take with the information. But the idea, part of this book is about how to make the house, most of it, safe and make modifications so that someone can live in their home and not have a fall and be safe. The second half of the book talks about decluttering all the stuff that I've just talked about today, and how to kind of organize the caregiving team so that nobody is doing this alone. So anyway, please look for my book. I have a sign up in the back, just over back there. If you want to give me your email, it won't be used for anything other than to tell you when the book comes out and when I'm going to be having a book signing and that kind of thing. I also have a Facebook page called The Organized Caregiver. So please like that page, and then you'll hear all things about organizing and safety and aging in place and caregiving. So, does anyone have any questions? We're doing questions. Does anyone have any questions at the moment? Yes.
I've got a comment, not so much as a question, but you talked about the clippings that you need to save for later. And what I've done for myself in the past couple of years is, clip them out of the magazine or wherever, and scan them and file them away in my computer so I don't have paper.
Even better, yes. That's right. We are all gearing toward the computer age, which you're going to hear about a lot more in the second half of this, but that is for sure. Not even have the paper at all. Yes?
When my mom wanted to get rid of my grandmother's jewelry, she put it all out on a table. We each had a number, and we picked the numbers out of the hat. And then she watched us as we each went around and picked things, and then she told us stories about them.
That's the best.
And it worked really well.
And the stories are the best part. They really are. Someone?
Just another comment. I think it's worth your while to scan your photos if you can. All of our photos are all scanned. Our children have them all. So even if we lost our computers or the house burned down, the photos still exist.
Mm-hmm.
So
very
it's a
good.
pain in the neck to do it the first time.
Yes.
It's worth it.
Yes.
If you scan your photos and send themselves to yourself on email, it will be saved in the cloud.
Mm-hmm.
So even if something happens to your computer, they're saved.
Right. Yes.
When I get home, what should I do with this package?
That's my friend Leo.
Throw it away.
We didn't hear it.
Could you stand up and repeat your question, sir?
Stand up and repeat.
Could you stand up and repeat your question? It was a very pithy one, and someone didn't hear it over here.
I asked, when I get home, what should I do with this package of papers? My biggest problem is when I come home from a meeting or a conference.
You're right, and certainly I don't know that there's anything on my sheets that were earth-shattering, but when you do save things again, I mean, if you have a file cabinet and you organize your important papers and articles that you want to go back on, if you can't get them onto the computer, it's not so terrible to have a files little section. It's just that, but you can also go through it, which we don't do, but to cull some of the stuff, because from, a talk that you went to 3 years ago, it's probably like outdated already. Yes.
You started out by saying that our children don't want our stuff. Okay. I remember as a younger person telling my mom I didn't want her stuff, certain stuff. Now as an older individual, I regret that there are some things that I wish I had taken. Mm-hmm. So how do you deal with that with your children?
I just said, pardon me? Well, the question was, even though I said your kids don't want your stuff, and she felt that way with her own mom's stuff, but now she regrets that she didn't take some things. And that's what we did do, and we did want some of our mother's stuff, and we did go through and actually tell her what we wanted. And my kids are circling now for the jewelry. I said, my God, I mean, they're like, oh, what'd you get for Valentine's Day? I mean, I hope I have a few more good years to wear it, but that's when you have the conversation now and say to the kids, you know what, guys, come over. look at this was Grandma's dining room set. It's a big, huge thing. Does one of you want it? Or this or that, or go through the house. Now, when you're happy, you're healthy, you're fine, they're fine. And sometimes the kids will say, Mom, this is ridiculous. I don't want to talk about it. You're not going to die. I mean, I do these talks all the time, and that's what I hear. You're fine, and we're not going to talk about this. That's the thing. They have to talk about it. It's often not even us. It's the kids who want to avoid it and not talk about it. But it's so important, and if you can get this conversation going and say, you know, there are some pretty good things in here. What do you guys want? And you have to just ask.
Well, if I could just add something to my comment, because I don't know that I explained myself completely. Some of the things that I want are not necessarily, or wish that I had taken, were not necessarily things I would have used. Like my daughter would not wear the jewelry that I wear, and I would not wear much of what my mother had. But I just wish that I had it, or the sentiment that's attached to it. And how do you make young people in this generation understand that you're not necessarily asking them because you expect them to use it or want it or in that context, but just for the sentiment?
I know. Well, that's when you have that discussion about the story. So if there is a piece and you say, you know, Grandma wore this when she met Grandpa in the war and blah, 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 and, you know, there's a little story about it, I want you to understand that this is not just a little brooch, but this is why, and you know, it's about the meaning. And that often then clicks something in their mind that, oh, you know, that really was. And if you're not going to have the conversation, then you can sit and write that little story down and leave it with that pin, and hopefully it'll hit them when you're gone, that they want to grab it. I think, do we have time for like one more? Yes.
It's a comment on jewelry. My mother gave away her good jewelry to her daughters and her granddaughters and her granddaughters-in-law, and we all loved it. But when she got older, she was making a lot of beaded jewelry, and they were lovely. But she made it all the time and gave it to everybody. But when she died, there was a lot of it. Well, my daughter was pregnant with her first child around that time. So at her shower, this is just an idea, everybody got to choose a pair of Grandma's earrings to take with them as their gift after the shower. And it was lovely, and I still see these people wearing it.
Right, and if they hear a little story about Grandma and who she was.
Most of them knew her.
Right, so then it's more meaningful, even if it's not something you'd ever really wear, but it means something. Anybody else? All right, quick.
Just another quickie story. When I was a little girl, one of the things I loved to do was play with the buttons in my mother's little sewing box. And they were very old buttons. And my mother was very unemotional, I thought. But now that I remember those buttons, I think some of them were older than my mother, much older than my mother was. They were leather and all different kinds of things you'd never see today. Well, I loved them. And my mother came to visit me once, and I had stolen a couple of these just to have and to go with me through my life. And she seemed to think it was a good idea to organize my sewing box. And she threw them all away. She didn't understand. She didn't understand what they meant to me. And I mean, that's you know, where conversations come in handy, because things you might never say to your mother or she to you, and she had no idea that meant anything.
Right, exactly. There was one more here.
I just have a question too about scanning photos. Maybe people can say how they scan their photos. I know there are some
There's actually services now.
Services, and how
that you can take
reliable would they
your
be?
pictures too and give them the pile and they'll do it. I mean, you can stand there with a scanner and you lay them on the glass and you close the thing and you press the thing. But I mean, you know, it's time consuming, like somebody said, very time consuming. I don't know if anyone knows any companies that do it that are.
They come up on really fun all the time.
Yeah. So I mean, I think that they're pretty reliable. You get scared about, you know, sending them away. I mean, I know there's something called What's Happening Productions locally, and they do like all your old videotapes and stuff, and we've done that. And at least you walk in there and hand it to them, and they aren't going anywhere. They're right there. I don't know if they do pictures. Yes, somebody.
But Reeves ProLab in Albany does scanning. They can clean
slides, they can repair.
Can you just say that a little louder?
Yes. In Albany, there's an organization, a company called McGreevy's Pro Lab. You spell that? McGreevy is M-C-G-R.
McGreevy. McGreevy Pro Lab.
Pro Lab, right. And they'll across from the D&H building in Albany. And they do scanning, they'll clean up photographs, you can work with them, they're really good. You can show them what you got and tell them what you need.
That's a good idea. One more. Then I
For just a few bucks, you can buy a scanner to hook up to your home computer.
True, but then you stand there, for 5 people.
A couple a day.
But you're right. Break it up into small tasks. All right, I'm going to be quiet now. Thank you so very much.
So Lynda, that was terrific. It was really helpful. Now I do want to give time to Amanda. Where are you, Amanda? Oh, right there. Amanda wears 2 hats. She is the advocacy coordinator for Death with Dignity-Albany, and she is also the campaign organizer for Compassion and Choices. And so she is our absolute resident expert on the state of legislation for medical aid in dying. So there are a couple of new developments that are very interesting, so I'll bring Amanda up here. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I promise not to keep you for very long. I know this program has been full of very helpful information, so I don't want to bog your minds down anymore. But I certainly want to keep you abreast of what's happening in New York State with the passage of medical aid in dying. Some things that folks may have heard me talk about lately are finally coming to fruition, so I want to make sure that you all know of that. The first one is that the Medical Society of the State of New York promised that they were going to survey their members last year at a House of Delegates meeting. And for the past year, on a weekly basis, I meet and talk with physicians and say, have you got the survey yet? What's going on? And we've been trying to track down the survey and figure out what the next steps are. Yesterday at 10:20 a.m., I got an email that finally told me the survey is out. So if you are a physician, if you know a physician, ask them to take the survey that the Medical Society put out on medical aid in dying. As we know, in states where the Medical Society has changed their opinion from being opposed to the legislation to being neutral, we have had great success in passing a law. So we're really hopeful that the survey results will lead us in a good direction. So that's the first and the most important thing that I can say at this very moment. Another important thing that I want to mention is that at the end of April, the governor has announced special elections. There are a number of open seats within the Assembly and the Senate. One of them being in the Rensselaer County area, Assemblyman Steve McLaughlin, sorry, totally lost me for a second. His seat is open. We would like to really do our best to get people that we know that are supportive of medical aid in dying in those seats. So if you are somebody who lives in a district with an open seat, please be sure to check into that. The next most important thing that I want to talk about very briefly is that some amendments were made to the Medical Aid in Dying Act over the past few months. The majority of the amendments were really minor and technical. They were changing a period to a comma or moving things around a little bit, but there were some things that we at Compassion and Choices believe really make the bill stronger, and so I want everyone to sort of have an idea of what they are. And this is not, I'm not going to go into detail about every single one, but just a few that I would like to highlight. We were able to tighten the definition of terminal illness to ensure that eligible patients must have a terminal illness or condition that's incurable and irreversible and will likely result in death in 6 months or less. The amendment eliminates the arguable ambiguous language that a terminal illness is likely to be fatal with or without treatment. So you may have heard there was some arguments in the media going back and forth about, like, well, if somebody has diabetes, they could say that's a terminal illness. So we've really taken the lead here in New York and drawn out anything that could be used like that. Another thing that has been done is we've strengthened the provision requiring a mental health evaluation to require a referral to a mental health professional when an attending physician has any doubt about a patient's capacity to make an informed decision. So the language around the mental health evaluation is a little bit stricter, and I imagine in the future we'll see some changes about who is allowed to do the mental health evaluation. This, to me, is the most important amendment, and so I'm going to read that sort of word for word to you. But we've strengthened the language that the attending physician's responsibilities, requiring that the attending physician notify the patient requesting medical aid in dying, the restriction that no person other than the patient may administer the medication, the importance of informing the patient's family of their decision to use medical aid in dying, and not only of the feasible alternatives or additional treatment opportunities, including but not limited to palliative care and hospice care, but also the range of options appropriate to the patient, the prognosis, risks and benefits of the various options, and the patient's legal rights to comprehensive pain and symptom management at the end of life, and information regarding treatment options appropriate to the patient, including the prognosis, risks and benefits of various other treatment options. Just to note, the reason why that's so important is because some people think that the Hospice and Palliative Care Association, they're currently opposed to the legislation. We really want to get them to a good place, so we feel like by letting them know in the bill detail that a physician has to explain options about hospice and palliative care, we might have a better chance of getting them to become supporters or at least neutral. Yes?
Did you say that the physician has to tell the family if they've given the prescription to the patient?
No, the doctor wouldn't tell the family. The doctor's just telling the person that's getting the prescription they should talk to their family about it, but it's not a requirement.
Did you say it was mandated the physician tell a person, or the person that's sick has to ask for it?
Oh, it's always, one of the first things in the bill is that the person has to voluntarily ask for it. It's not something that a physician can offer.
This medical aid in dying, is it on the computer? It's a New York State law?
It's not a law currently. We're trying to get it passed.
So where would you access if you want to read it?
You can, if you do a bill search, you can find it. I have copies of the summary in the back too I can give you. And then a couple more amendments. Ensuring that both attending and consulting physician that are agreeing that the patient be able to use medical aid in dying have access to the mental health professional's written report. No matter which doctor actually makes the referral, both doctors will be able to see it. Clarifying that euthanasia would remain prohibited under New York state law. Sometimes we hear from people who are opposed that euthanasia or mercy killing or all these other things, so we make sure that those things will remain illegal. And we also added specific requirements to the provision regarding safe disposal of any unused medication. So we don't have to worry about medication getting in the wrong hands. It will be specific as to how. So those are some of the amendments, and like I said, they're much more lengthy, and I can certainly go over them if people have questions or send you a list of them, but those are the highlights. The other thing, co-sponsors for the bill have really been rising lately. We've seen a huge number, increase in number has doubled, and we're actually starting to see some senators sign on now. So if you have not met with your lawmaker and asked them to co-sponsor the bill, you certainly should. And the last thing I want, well, two last things I want to talk about. One is that we're having a lobby day in Albany on April 23rd. We'll also be having a webinar training on April 9th. We want as many people in their yellow t-shirts there as possible. So if you're interested in signing up, my cards are in the back. Send me an email and I can send you detailed information. And the last thing I just wanted to mention is that we're talking about all of this estate planning and getting rid of things and getting your affairs in order. Compassionate Choices is a great resource for end-of-life planning, advanced care directives. I left a book in the back called Your Life, Your Priorities, and that really goes over information about advanced care directives and that sort of thing. But if anybody has any questions, I'll stick around I want to make sure everyone gets out that wants to.
Hang on. Because we have so many new people here, I'm going to ask Amanda to just go back to step 1 and describe what the bill is that is pending in the New York State legislature.
Sure. So there is a bill in the Assembly sponsored by Assemblywoman Amy Paulin and a same-as bill in the Senate sponsored by Senator Diane Savino. And the Medical Aid in Dying Act is modeled after the law that's been in Oregon for the last 20 years. And there's currently 7 jurisdictions that have a similar law. We have a law pending in New Jersey that we're hopeful will pass by the end of the year. And then we have the law that's pending here in New York. The bill would allow a terminally ill person, an adult, so 18 or over, that has the mental capacity to make a decision, so folks who have Alzheimer's or dementia do not qualify, the option to ask their doctor for a prescription that they would take or never take to have a peaceful passing. So people who use this law tend to be end-stage cancer patients, ALS patients, people who really are having a prolonged death experience that would like to have an ending to their suffering. It's an option for people. It's not required. It's not something a doctor, a pharmacist, or anyone else would ever need to prescribe if they didn't feel comfortable doing that. The situation's completely voluntary. If a person asks for it, it doesn't necessarily mean that they'll get it. It also does not mean that they're required to take it. A person can change their mind at any point. It does need to be self-administered, so people who cannot take medication on their own wouldn't be able to qualify for medical aid in dying. And I think that one of the most important aspects of it is that in the 20 years that it's been legal in Oregon, less than 1,300 people have ever gotten and taken the medication. So when you think about how people die on a daily basis and how many people die, a number of 1,300 in 20 years is really minimal. But what does happen is that physicians have better end-of-life conversations with folks. They start to open up about what people want at the end of their life. They help with pain management and symptom management a little bit more. Hospice gets involved a little bit sooner. Patients who use medical aid in dying, 90% of them are on hospice, so they are getting the best end-of-life care they possibly can. And the peace of mind that people have by knowing that medical aid in dying is available is huge, and we hear about that from a lot of our patients who are suffering at the end of life. Was that good?
Great. That was good. Thanks, Amanda. Thank you to all of you who were here today. We hope to see you again April 3rd. And do check out our website. Thank you for coming.